And now it's time for us to discuss more of these headlines in simple keywords with Adam joining us via Zoom. Good morning, Adam.
Good morning, Lena. I'm liking this new setup that we've got going. I'm getting used to it now.
Are you? I'm not caring much for it. The tablet is way too close and it's a little bit too early for that.
It's kind of like a YouTube vlog style kind of perspective, a day in the life of Lena Kwan type
I don't
thing.
like that at all. How long have we been friends? Would I like that, Adam?
No, but
All right.
I guess your viewers and listeners would.
Thoughts? Do you like the new angle or does it feel remarkably similar? All right, Adam, let's get started now that we're all situated. The torrential rain has battered South Korea and there's been a record-breaking rainfall in the Greater Seoul area. So let's take inventory of the damages incurred overnight. Our first keyword of the day.
Rain damage.
So torrential rains have led to evacuations, school closures, and traffic disruptions. There were also casualties due to the damage caused. What's the latest on this front?
Right, so people living near, of course, rivers and landslide-prone areas were ordered to evacuate. In total, over 1,100 people were evacuated across the country. The northern parts of Gyeonggi province were actually among the hardest hit, including Paju. The capital region also experienced hourly precipitation between 30 millimeters and 60 millimeters per hour. This prompted flood alerts for 10 streams in the broader Seoul area. The Dongbu Expressway linking Seoul to Gyeonggi was entirely suspended. Sections of the Nebu Expressway were also briefly closed before going back into service later in the day. And there's also been other roads that have been closed off, including that Tamsu Bridge underpass to bus and cars. Now, the massive downpour also triggered landslide warnings for several parts of Seoul. A number of subway lines were also suspended as well. In Nonsan, South Chungcheong province, one person actually died due to a barn collapse, but it is currently being investigated whether this was because of the rain itself. Now, hundreds of hectares of rice fields and farmland have also been flooded. And it's not the end of it, unfortunately. More rain is expected until early next week. Right now, as we're speaking, it is a bit of a dry spell, but it's not going to be lasting very long. More rain is in the forecast. The government is therefore urging residents in affected areas to remain vigilant, avoid low-lying regions, and stay updated, of course, on weather alerts and safety instructions as well. So if you're living by the coast, by rivers, near mountains as well, do take extra precaution.
So for our non-local listeners, we do get a lot of weather disruptions during the monsoon season. Brace with us because that's what our job entails at the time. In the meantime, for local listeners, keep your weather updates handy. It's subject to changes, and we're seeing these concentration of large downpours. It actually has devastating effects, doesn't it?
Yeah, certainly does. I mean, they're coming in kind of shortish bouts.
Bursts of water.
Bursts of water, and it is quite significant. And it does take seconds for flood-prone areas to flood and cause significant damage. I mean, if you see the imagery of videos on the news, people literally having to escape their trucks and cars because the roads have flooded in a matter of seconds. So, of course, safety is a priority. So if you are a local listener and it does affect you, then do take precautions. Yeah.
And as for safety precautions, we have a whole segment carved out for our listeners. Safety precautions coming up in our second hour. All right, let's move on to our second keyword of the day.
Hong Kong sanction.
So South Korea has sanctioned a Hong Kong shipping firm and a North Korean vessel over allegations of illegal transfer of North Korean coal. It does date back to March, the instance, but we're getting more details on the story. What's the layest?
Right, so the Foreign Ministry says the 3,000-ton Daewoo owned by HK Yiling Shipping took coal from a North Korean vessel, Toksong, in March off the north coast in a ship-to-ship transfer. Maritime transshipment with North Korean vessels and the export of North Korean coal are prohibited under UN Security Council resolutions. Now, the ship was seized with 13 crew members on board, including a Chinese captain. The ship was moved to Mokpo port for further investigation. The investigation revealed the ship was initially registered in Togo, but was stateless at the time of capture. Now, despite evidence of sanctions violations, most crew members were allowed to leave without charges. The ship also reportedly transferred electronic goods, which are prohibited items, to another North Korean vessel before receiving the coal. The military said its sanctions demonstrated the government's strong will to end North Korea's illegal nuclear and missile development by blocking its illegal maritime activities. It also vowed to continue to take strong law enforcement action against vessels and operators engaged in the transportation of contraband. Of course, South Korea is very sensitive to such illegal transfers happening between North Korea and other countries, especially in light of heightened cooperation between North Korea and Russia as well. So they are certainly keeping a more vigilant eye on these things and keeping a closer eye on North Korean movements as well. So, of course, this latest move also is the latest in a series of that as well.
Speaking of which, North Korea is continuing its trash balloon campaign. It brings us to our third keyword of the day.
Border tensions.
So North Korea has resumed launching trash-filled balloons towards South Korea, prompting the South Korean military to resume loudspeaker broadcasts across the border. So tensions have escalated yet again. What's the latest on this front?
Right, so the Joint Chiefs of Staff said the balloons appear to be travelling toward the northern part of Gyeonggi, advising the public not to touch the fallen balloons and to report them to the military or police. This was the 8th such incident this year and the first in 22 days. Now, the South Korean military reportedly reactivated their loudspeakers as a countermeasure. They have been a significant part of psychological operations against North Korea since 1963. Now, these broadcasts often include K-pop music and information about the realities of the Kim Jong-un regime. The South Korean military had previously resumed loudspeakers on June 9th after a 6-year hiatus, following, multiple trash balloon incidents by North Korea. Now, a government official here mentioned that additional broadcasts might be considered based on North Korea's future actions. Now, the latest move comes days after Kim Yo-jong, the sister of Kim Jong-un, threatened new types of responses if South Korea continues with actions like sending anti-North Korean leaflets. There are concerns that the regime might escalate provocations by targeting critical infrastructure such as Incheon and Gimpo airports, or by using heavy rains, of course, to send mines down rivers into the south, something we reported on yesterday. We're not quite sure if those are the new responses that Kim Yo-jong did refer to, or if it's just a coincidence of them opening their dams and the mines being just drifting into the south.
Right.
But the South Korean military is monitoring several locations in Hwanghae province identified as potential launch points for the balloons. And of course, they're keeping a closer eye on North Korean movements, as I said before, closer than before, in case these new provocations, whatever they may be, do occur.
It turns out, I guess, due to the direction of the wind in the last 24 hours, most of those trash balloons landed in parts of Gyeonggi-do and Gangwon-do province. It didn't travel further down south, but that's the latest of their campaign.
Yeah, so especially with the strong winds and the heavy rain as well, once they do make a landfall, for want of a better term, they could drift into many other areas as well, and of course contaminate the waters that are already being flooded here in South Korea. So it is causing a bit of concern and potential chaos as well.
Protocol is to not to touch it and alert the authorities, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's common sense. I mean, if there's
a large
alien
balloon.
objects, if there's a large balloon filled with trash with alien objects from North Korea, I think most of the public should be, sensible and do well to not touch them. I think it's the most common sense kind of action to take, right?
I don't know. Better safe than sorry. I hear crazy things on the news all the time. So how about that?
Right, yeah, you do get a few, but if you are near one or if you discover it, best keep your distance.
All right, let's move on to our fourth keyword of the day.
Public housing.
So the government announced plans to supply 236,000 housing units at significantly lower prices than the market rates by 2029. It seems that most of it is in the greater Seoul area, so maybe in satellite cities, in Gyeonggi-do province, for example. Tell us the details.
Yeah, so the announcement was made by Finance Minister Choi Sang-mok after a related meeting. The government will be focusing on the so-called third new towns or new cities. Now, additionally, The government will secure over 10,000 more public rental units as well than previously planned, upping the number to 130,000. This decision comes as house prices continue to rise, particularly in the metropolitan area. There are also plans to add more than 20,000 new homes in the metropolitan area by releasing greenbelt areas in the second half of this year. Specific sites, however, will be decided through further discussions. The government aims to boost housing supply through urban redevelopment and reconstruction projects as well. It was noted that liquidity for real estate project financing is smooth, with over 24 trillion won in loan guarantees already executed for normal projects. Institutional improvements will be made as well to increase the speed and feasibility of these projects. Now, to encourage private sector supply, tax support will be extended for the purchase of new small non-apartment homes. The government will strengthen monitoring of mortgage loans and, if necessary, enhance prudential regulations. The scheduled implementation of stricter rules on household loans will proceed in September. As planned, a stress interest rate, as it's called, will apply when calculating the debt service ratio for bank mortgage loans to reflect the risk of interest rate fluctuations, to emphasize the importance of preventing speculative demand from driving up housing prices, of which there has been some instances of happening as of late. On-site inspection teams will also be mobilized to crack down on market disruptive activities and illegal actions with strict enforcement and tax collection measures. The government is prepared to take additional drastic measures if market overheating continues despite these efforts. Now, to ensure swift implementation of these measures, a task force will be meeting weekly to monitor the real estate market and supply situation. Additionally, further housing supply expansion plans will be announced in August as well. So this is all trying to balance the kind of trying to prevent the overheating of the real estate market. We're seeing kind of the beginnings of a potential overheating in the market with prices, especially in the Seoul area, kind of creeping up. And of course, especially in Korea, the real estate market tends to be a lot volatile, very volatile. So, yeah, the government is trying to keep that in check with, of course, basic economics, demand and supply. So if you increase the supply, demand tends to go down. But we've seen instances of that before where it hasn't really helped, and house prices skyrocketed nonetheless. But we'll have to see.
I sense a little bit of frustration in Adam's rap verses. That was that was something.
For a person who's trying to buy a house, it's not the best of times to start looking.
Right. But I mean, if we could have a whole segment on real estate, we would. But it's just really that complex, depending on which area in Seoul you talk about. I mean, some houses are always in demand, and it doesn't really feel like there's necessarily volatility there in those exclusive neighborhoods where schools are good, for example. There's good infrastructure. It's always been expensive, and it's more heated from that. Yeah.
I mean, especially within Seoul as well. But of course, because of the high prices in Seoul and in the capital itself, a lot of people are kind of migrating to the outskirts, hence why areas outside and overall in the overall metropolitan area, housing prices are also escalating as well. So, yeah, it's a tough one. So not the best market to be looking to buy.
I can't remember the last time we were in a good market to buy a home, but we'll leave it there for now. That's what the government wants to alleviate, right? At least make some affordable housing available to the public. Yeah. We'll wait and see how that plan works out. Let's move on to our final keyword this morning, a landmark ruling for same-sex couples. This is our final keyword of the day.
Gay couple benefits.
So Korea's top court has ruled that gay couples are eligible to receive the same health insurance benefits as straight couples. This is the first time the Supreme Court has partially recognized the legal rights of same-sex couples. Run us through the ruling.
Right, so the court ruled that the state health insurance agency's refusal to provide spousal insurance coverage for gay couples was an act of discrimination that violates the constitutional principle of equality. And the court emphasized that while same-sex marriages are not recognized under civil law, social security systems like health insurance should treat gay partners similarly to those in a quote-unquote de facto marital relationship. Now, the decision implies that same-sex partners who live together and rely on each other economically can be considered dependents under the health insurance system, even if their union is not recognized as a marriage by civil law. The decision, however, may pave the way for expanding economic rights for same-sex couples in other areas beyond just health insurance. Now, this all kicked off from a legal battle between Gay couples Ho Song-uk and Kim Yong-min and the National Health Insurance Service. It began after the insurance agency revoked Seo's registration as a dependent of Kim, prompting Seoul to file an administrative suit. The couple, of course, welcomed the ruling. A majority of the justices agreed that the exclusion of the same-sex partners from dependent status violated the constitutional principle of equality. However, a few justices still argued that marriage is traditionally between a man and a woman, and that the exclusion did not constitute arbitrary discrimination. So it wasn't a unilateral ruling. There were some sort of divides within the justices. Now, advocacy groups, of course, have welcomed the ruling as well as a step towards equality, but there is still a lot of opposition that remains, particularly, of course, from conservative and religious groups. So, yeah, it is a landmark ruling. Will it expand into other kind of sectors and areas? We'll have to see.
Other welfare benefits, for example, could it be extended to same-sex couples? We'll wait and see, but it is certainly a landmark ruling. Thank you very much, Adam, for a week's worth of coverage. Stay dry. We'll see you next week.
Stay dry. Have a brilliant weekend. I'll see you next week.
If you're listening to our program using the podcast service, just a reminder that we do go live Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. Korea Standard Time. So tune in and help us make the show more informative by giving us your input. See you bright and early on Good Morning Seoul.